G'day guys, it is the coach here and we are talking all things knife ears, but more importantly, we are talking all things Lumineth Realm-Lords. Is that like a cultural insult, Hayden? Have I just insulted you straight off the bat by calling you a knife ear? Because I'm a Gits player and back in the day, the goblins used to fear high elves. So maybe that's a bit of intimidation coming out of me.
I'm okay being a dirty knife ear. It's okay.
All right.
It's okay.
Well, we have here got the Aelf Bro himself. Hayden is a friend of the channel. You have done a number of videos with me, and probably the most popular of my Lumineth Realm-Lords videos we did like literally 12 months ago when the book just dropped. It was so limited, I didn't even have a copy of the battletome back then because it was stuck in that little box. So I was making stuff up. You were obviously telling me. But we're back. But most importantly, because we have a second book, mate. Who knew we were going to get an updated book so soon?
The second half of the book
makes me believe that maybe Gargans are going to get another 4 War Scrolls in an updated book in the next 12 months. But we are talking Lumineth. You know, anyone who is interested in Lumineth, maybe you picked up the original starter box with, you know, your Dawn Riders and your Sentinels and your Wardens, and, you know, like you started building out a force that was mostly based around, what, 10 models at most? You didn't have a big selection. And then, you know, not long ago, you guys have like literally doubled your roster. So I'm here with Hayden to talk a bit about that doubling of the roster, see how his opinions have changed, and how he's now thinking about Lumineth. And we've also got a second show with Jordan from Seasons of War. So we're going to have 2 polarizing, potentially opposite, or who knows what the guys are going to discuss. So you should get a good sense of how people are thinking about Lumineth now. But maybe before we get into that, Hayden, you want to say anything? Welcome, g'day, hello.
It's been a bit. I think last time I was here, I was talking about greenskins. So it's good to be back talking about knife ears. But these guys are my pride and joy. They are the army in my heart. So it's good to see them get a second half of this book and get them back on the table again.
What were your thoughts on the second book, right? Because I can appreciate why they got the second book, and I don't want to harp on it too much, right? But your roster has literally doubled. You know, when we first talked, it was all about like Techless, the Cathalar. You know, you had some endless spells. Yeah. You know, you had a bunch of troops. There was no hero for the Dawn Riders. All of a sudden, you got all these cool characters. All of a sudden, you got a terrain piece. All of a sudden, you've got all this extra stuff like Severeth and even the Bolt Thrower, which kind of felt a bit weird having a high elf equivalent without a Bolt Thrower. But here we are.
Yeah.
Roster is literally doubled. Like, what was your take, and how are you feeling now about Lumineth?
So, obviously, we know the giant global bastard's been going on for the last 12, 18 months. So when that book dropped, it really felt like it was only half a book. So for when this one to drop, it left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth that we had to pay $70 for the other half of a book that should have been dropped at the one time. But at the same time, you look at it and go, well, the world was in a place where stuff was going on, books getting printed, models getting stuck in places, and they wanted to get them out to people. So I guess it is what it is. But it's good to have the second half. They're feeling a lot like Stormcast right now, though, in the fact it's just open another chamber. And I'm looking forward to seeing the Tyrion side of stuff, hopefully in the near future, a little bit down the line. We're getting teasers of him. There's like statues of him in some of the new kits, which is awesome to see. But it's like there's Vanguard Chamber, Extremist Chamber, whatever. We're gonna see the Water guys. We're gonna see the Zenith guys, or whatever it is, and it's gonna be a hoot. So,
I think what's really cool about it is that you know that this is an army that the company is going to reinvest in, and you know you're going to be able to see a greater expansion. My take on the second battle tome is. And this is not an official answer, but I think Chapter House, which was a very famous lawsuit that Games Workshop was in the early 2000s, I think that played a significant part. because back in the day, back in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, they would talk about things that would get models years later. And then Chapter House came around, they started creating models, and because there was no model for the IP, the Chapter House actually went against Games Workshop, and it meant that that's why they're really protective now. If I'm not showing, I'm not releasing. So I think there's part of that. But I can fully appreciate for anyone who's a Lumineth player, you bought a book, maybe a limited edition book, and now you're like 12 months later, oh crap, that book is now invalid. Yes, you can Broken Realms it and all that stuff, and I can fully appreciate that. But as a Gargant player,
costs the same as a battletome.
I'll pay for a second. I'll pay for a second battletome if I get more Gargants or I get more gifts. So I can fully appreciate where you're coming from, but. Are you excited about the new models? You've gotten so many new heroes. You got the battle standard bearer guy. You've got the twins. You've got you've got the Law Seeker. You've got the terrain piece. That terrain piece is off the charts. I didn't think you would get a terrain piece.
Yeah, that thing is so big. It is so big. But it's very pretty as well, and that's the thing. Like all these elf models are all gorgeous models and really, really well designed, and all the new stuff really plugs a lot of holes and a lot of weaknesses that were missing from that first half. So it now feels like a complete book.
I think when we talked as well, like you were talking about Dawn Riders, and I think we had talked 12 months ago about the fact that you didn't really have a hero to support Dawn Riders. They kind of just ran off and did their own thing while everything else kind of slow moved. So it's I was really excited to see the roster expansion.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of thinking and a lot of list building and a lot of money out of my wallet.
How has it changed your list design? Like we're going to obviously talk about a couple of your lists and go through the rules and things, but like how has it changed your thinking, right? Because if we go back to the early days of the first book reviews, we had Liam talked about lists based around the battle cattle or the beefer of secrets, as we might have called it. A lot of people have just doubled down on the wardens and sentinels, and maybe either had techless or no techless Cathalar. We had this very traditional build, but now, as you said, we've unlocked. How has it changed the way you're thinking and designing?
Personally, it's changed a lot of mine. I've been really playing with lists that are away from that kind of standard net list that we've been seeing going around and doing really well. I've been wanting to try and do something different. So having a whole bunch of new models to play with is really opened up my list building and having fun with more models that I really enjoy the look of. Like the Blade Lords are some of the prettiest models that I've seen in this range, and they're probably my favorite model in this range now. They're just such cool models, and I was a big fan of Swordmasters back in Warhammer Fantasy days. So for me to go, cool, I have Swordmasters again, they're generally going in a lot of my list building. Even though
I've seen that, people who used to run bolt throwers have now got an equivalent. I've seen people like you who have gone, cool, I really loved my sword masters. I loved, particular elements. So it's cool to see that being brought back. And I'm sure Tyrion, when he eventually comes, will unlock even more. And who knows, maybe dragons come back again.
Yeah, we'll wait and see, I guess. See what we get.
Well, this is what you got, right? And, for anyone who hasn't watched this, we'll go a little bit over the allegiance abilities. See that smooth transition? That's like pure professional content creator right there. It was just like smooth. How has your allegiance abilities, or obviously your allegiance ability hasn't changed, right? So between book 1 and book 2, nothing has changed here from the Aether Quartz Reserve, the lightning reflexes and all that, right? But how has your thinking changed? Because again, back in the day, it was Warden Sentinels, Dawn Riders, and a couple of heroes. And it was probably more about magic before, right? It was about Techless, about the Cathalar. It was really magic heavy.
Yeah.
Is that still true to you when you're looking at your lists, or are some of these reserves maybe being more incentivized now with certain of the new units?
So I remember last time we talked, I was all about Zytrek. So I was all about magic and all that kind of jazz then. That was really before I played a lot of games with them. Having played a few games with them, I dropped Zytrek straight away. A lot of the times, especially with Aether Quartz, you find a really good use, and there's so much utility with it. You use everything. I'm generally not using the +1 to hit. I'm generally using +1 save, especially on my Stone Guard. +1 save, ignoring Rend 1 or 2. So being on a 3-up save is amazing, and it just helps there. And then you've got the Magical Boost and the Magical Insight, which, especially the Magical Insight in one of the lists that we're going to go through, is really important. Magical Boost is really, really good. It's like, oh, I'm getting that didn't go off. Okay, I'm going to give it +1, or it went off, but I'm not confident in it. I can give it that +1, or you can just re-roll it. It's such a good utility piece, the Aether Quartz. Like the Aether Gold and KO. They're just the utility's there, and it's great.
Yeah, I would probably. I remember, I think I even talked to Martin Orlando, and I had Liam. We did a couple of shows, right? And I think Magical Boost and Magical Insight, getting the additional cast, the spell to cast, or the additional +1 to the casting roll, or the re-roll, it was very heavy towards that, right? Get that Umbral Spell Portal up, get those particular endless spells, especially if you didn't have Techless doing his auto casting, or you wanted to get more out of your troops, right? But I feel like now more than ever, heightened reflexes and even heightened senses has more reason to play. And there isn't as many auto decisions to just go down a magical supremacy.
Yeah, exactly.
What about some of the other pieces, your lightning reflexes and your absorb despair? Has that changed as all? Are you always taking the Cathalar to do the flip on the Aether Quartz abilities? Are you...
So I try to take Cathalar where possible. There should still be an auto include if you are running a lot of Wardens and Sentinels, because they're your protection against it. Because realistically, your Bravery 6, Bravery 7, you're not really confident if you lose a few models of keeping that unit around. So the Cathalar is still really, really good. But there are lists that I don't put one in. Especially if I'm running, say, a whole bunch of Hurricane Wind Riders, Wind Chargers, or Dawn Riders, because the Cathalar can't keep up. So there's no reason for me to have him in there and have him sitting at the back, not able to keep up, and then everything else just running around. So I'm better off taking, say, keep forgetting his name, the named Lord Regent, and just generating the extra CP with him, and then using Inspiring Presence instead of...
And I was going to say, obviously, we are in the cusp of, if you're watching this live, or if you're watching this, not live, but like if you're watching this very early on from its release, we are on the cusp of AOS 3. So who knows if Inspiring Presence is going to change and what it looks like. And, not having the CP to be able to just automatically get someone to pass Battle Shock might actually mean that the Cathalar is going to be even more powerful, because you don't have that automatic resource. So, keep that in mind when you listen to this discussion. This is an AOS 2 discussion, but we're being flexible enough within our rules to I guess, anticipate AOS 3. And really, this is all about not the perfect internet list, but rather how do you tap into the allegiance abilities and the sub-allegiance abilities to the unit selection and the list choices. Because points are going to go up, points are going to go down, but what's going to be consistent is the core of a list.
Yeah, that's it. Also, lightning reactions is amazing. Well, I know we said that last time, but it's so far ahead of a lot of things that people are getting in allegiance abilities. The fact that you can just go, cool, I'm going to pick 2 units to fight. And
Talk to me about why. Because when we caught up last time, it would have been theory, right? Like, yeah, cool. When it's my turn to fight, I get to pick 2 units instead of 1. And, you mentioned, it was very early on, right? We were still building our lists. We were, you've gone to tournaments now. Very fortunate in Australia to have tournaments in the pandemic, but you've now had this ability to practice this. What makes this awesome in your opinion?
It makes your opponent have to make a decision, which is the part that I found about it, is that they know that you can pick 2. So you can pretty much go, okay, well, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go here. And then they have to go, okay, well, out of those 2 units, which one, like if you're in combat and they're picking, which one am I going to go with before, so they can fight, and I know this other unit won't be able to get to hit. And it forces decision making, and when you're forcing your opponent to make a decision, they can make mistakes, and that's where you can capitalize on that. So,
no, it's good. I know as an opponent, when I've gone into a Lumineth, I'm really thinking about my units, and I'm thinking, can my army or my unit that I'm charging into combat, can it handle 2 sets of attacks, and what's the attrition going to look like, so that when I do fight back, it's a fair trade-off. I'm not going to throw something into my opponent and let you fight twice, or I'm going to try to position my unit in such a way that I'm only allowing you to fight with 1 unit. So, with smart play on your side, Hayden, you could really force an opponent to almost like crab-like across the board just to avoid dragging in that second unit in combat.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's just some way I've been thinking about this rules as an opponent. I'm like, right, can I handle it? And I think that's the danger. But one thing that we didn't talk about last time is this thing, the shrine. I was going to call it the Loon Shrine for a second. I almost called it the Loon Shrine. My goblin came out again. But you've got this whole new terrain piece that, again, one surprised me. I didn't think you'd get a terrain piece.
Yeah.
But it's a really big model, and it's got some really interesting rules.
Yes.
From your side, so from your side of the fence, like what have you experienced since this has come about, and what parts of the rules have really been helpful to you?
This thing is phenomenal. It is one of the best faction terrain pieces that, rules-wise, that has been put out.
Well, I'm glad Lumineth got the best faction terrain.
I know, right?
That's great.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. The fact that you get a free canned ability per turn, not per battle round, per turn, is just, yeah, right, okay. Because it's like, cool, I get a free 100 points a battle round, realistically, because you know that you're getting a command point for that. So it's like every turn, bang, 50 points on the board. The re-rolling, casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls per turn as well. And then that is within 12, and then that doubles to 24 when you've got a Shrine Guardian in there. Sweet. And then you garrison it in as well. So say you've put a caster in there, and then you can use Protection of Protection of Hitch, and then you're measuring your bubble from the outside of the shrine instead of the 32 mil base that hero's on. There's a lot that you can use it for. It's such a pretty model too, which is something that I love it.
I look forward to destroying one with a Gatebreaker Mega Gargant. 2+ is going to look sweet, but I've got to get to it first, right?
Yeah, I can't wait for Severeth to go in the mirror match and just each person destroying each other's terrain on a 2-up.
So, has this influenced your list design, right? Like, has this now making you think about bringing in something with a Shrine Guardian, or are you thinking now about, always having a wizard that's going to sit on top of the garrison essentially and extend the range? Or are you how are you thinking about that from a list tech point of view?
Personally, I have been. I've been putting in Caligrave or a Banner Blade, and they sit in that because I don't care where they go on the table. Especially in a lot of the lists that I'm building, the command abilities are board wide. So it doesn't matter who uses it. It's just cool. They use it. This can do this, and they're getting it for free, and they're sitting in the shrine. So
you're trying to tap into some of those more table wide abilities, but getting the reroll 1 casting, dispelling, or unbinding. That's within 12.
Yeah, it's nice, but I'm not really using it in some of my lists because a lot of my lists have because I'm using Twin Stones in a lot of my lists now, having that reroll isn't as prevalent because I'm getting +4 to cast a lot of the time, and spells are just going off, so it's nice.
So what part of it is being the incentive?
The free command ability per turn.
Right. Okay. So it's the CP generation, and again, we don't know what's coming with CPs and reactions and all that stuff. But
the thing with it is the wording is you can use a command ability without using a command point. So regardless of having a command point or not, you can use a command ability. That's the big one. So even if there are all the changes in the rumor changes that are happening, you can still use a command ability without a command point.
So probably thinking about things like you're looking at maybe whoever's going to sit on top of this terrain piece is going to need some generic command abilities or a war scroll ability that has a generous range, probably, I imagine. Because if you put like a generic hero and you want to reroll ones to save in combat, if it's not your general, it's a 6-inch range that is not that useful on top of the terrain piece. But when you start looking at something that might have a command ability range where you pick a model within 18 or 24, all of a sudden now that becomes really valuable. So I guess deciding who's going to sit on top of it and how you want it to really use it is going to be critical.
Yeah, and you look at the Great Nation command abilities as well, and there's a couple in there that have some board-wide abilities which are a little spicy.
Yeah, we better not be talking about so I know we've got 2 lists here, and we're actually going to look at 2 of the Great Nations. Before we get into the Great Nations and we look at aluminium, no, it's Aluminia. Before we look at our Aluminia, how do you feel about all of the Great Nations now? Do you think that all of them are relatively equal from a list tech point of view? Do you think that some are stronger than others? Because I know from my emerging meta series, I'm seeing Syar and is it Iliath? No, what's the other one? There's another one. There's like 2 of them that are really popular, and Aluminia is really like rocketing up. It's becoming more and more popular.
Alumina's really popular. Syar is still a standout.
Yeah, that's number one. Syar's number one.
Syar, with its command ability, it's number one, and it's still number one. Alumina's really good. I still like Umetrica personally. The Ignoring Ren 2 is really, really good. Zytrek, the extra spell is nice, and the +1 to cast is nice. But in the world of Darkfire Demon Rift, Zytrek hurts. You get punished because you're relying on being super magic heavy. The minute you're super magic heavy and there's a Demon Rift around, you're in deep doo-doo if you don't have Techless.
And it might be worth calling out that if you are playing Lumineth, you are in a good position to be playing top tables, right? If you're at a tournament, and which means you're going to be up against KO. It's going to mean you're up against Seraphon and Zench. That was what I was trying to get out of my mouth. I said Seraphon, but which is true. Like you'll be playing with Croak and friends. Who knows what new Croak's going to look like? But you're also going to be looking at about your Zench and your Darkfire Demrith coming out.
Yeah. So like, Zytrek's still really good. It's just got a few really hard counters out there. With this new stuff, I think Ilya is going to get more of a look, especially depending on what goes on with the new edition. I think you may see a lot more Ilya once the new edition drops, just for it.
Yeah.
Because it has a lot of inbuilt reroll ones to hit or reroll ones to wound, and using multiple command abilities for 1 CP and stuff like that. And you don't have to use a hero to use these command abilities. They can be used from units. So that is really good. But at this stage in AOS 2, where we are right now, Syar is still the one to go to. And Helon's really good as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk more Syar. That's spoiler alert here. We are going to talk a Syar list next.
Yeah.
So we won't go too much into that because we've got Alumnia first. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts around where are the Great Nations at. I know as a Cities of Sigmar player, I could tell you there's probably 4 out of the 7 that are very strong playable from the original book. And sometimes the meta shift and one will become better than others. But Syar definitely is. And it's interesting that Alumina. I keep wanting to say aluminium. Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's just talk about the rules and stop me talking about the wrong name. It's just mental stuck in my head. So you've got 4 things, right? You've got your ability, which is claim the field. You've got your burning gaze. You've got your seize the moment, and you've got an artifact, the waystone. When you look at some of these things you're going to get, are all of them important to your list tech that we're about to see? What do we got? After armies are set up for the first battle round, 3 of the Venari or this
Scanari
can make a normal move but can't run. So a bit of it's a pretty cool little thing. Start of the combat phase, you can pick 1 enemy within 3 of the general. On a 2+, it suffers a mortal wound. I don't imagine that is I don't imagine that deep in your list tech. But you've got some things, right? Like are all 4 of these important to your list tech? One thing you kind of tap into more than others?
Only the ability and the command ability. They're the only things I really tap into. I fell in love with these guys for narrative reasons. But the abilities, especially with the list that we're going to go through, these play really well into the list that I've written. One thing to remember, and it came up in the Lumineth Discord chat yesterday, is that it is a pre-game move, and it's before first turn is chosen. So you have to move before whoever decides first turn chooses first turn. That is
because the rule is after armies have set up. So we've both set up, but before anything happens, so before the first battle round begins. Why is that important, Hayden?
Because if you move afterwards, it then can potentially change the decision of whoever is taking first turn. So I can go, cool, I'm going to take first turn, and say you've forgotten and go, I want to move I forgot to do my move. You then really should give them the choice again of going, well, do you want to take first turn or not? Because especially with its Venari, Scanari units. So you've got Dawn Riders in that. You've got Blade Lords. You've got Wardens. You've got Sentinels. You've got Lord Regents. You've got all of the non-elemental stuff, and your mages can move. That also includes the twins because they have both keywords.
Ooh. Good. And then you seize the moment was another thing you're thinking about, the command ability that
board wide doesn't.
You can choose this command ability in your charge phase. If you do so, pick 1 friendly Illumina unit that ran this turn. That unit can charge in the charge phase. So
sweet. No ranges, no nothing. Cool.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because obviously we know that if you're sitting on the terrain piece, you can use a free command ability by tapping into that, for example, which has no range. It means it's a table wide ability. So cool. I'm starting to see some of the list tech that you're thinking about here.
Yeah.
So we've got our first list, which is so we've got our Wind Mage, we've got a Venari Lord Regent. Sorry, the Wind Mage has the Waystone as well as the spell of Transporting Vortex. Your Lord Regent is the general with Burning Gaze, which is coming from the Allegiance ability. You've got the Sahari Pommel. You've got the Ethereal Blessing, which is the Law of Hish. You've also got Severeth, which is the named Foxy Fox. As well as the Caligrave, which has got protection of Hish. Then you've got 5 Dawn Riders, 10 Dawn Riders, 5 Dawn Riders, 20 Wardens, 10 Wardens, 10 Stone Guard. Obviously, there's a bunch of spells there, whether it's Solar Flare, Speed of Hish, Lambient Light. You've also got an artillery. You got the Ballista. Cool. Interested to hear how you're thinking and using the Ballista. I haven't really seen it on the table yet. You got yourself the Dawn Rider Lance, as well as the
Sactum.
The Sactum Endless spell. Which one's that one? That's the stone?
The surroundy one.
Oh, it's the surrounding stone. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And that's coming in at 1980 currently. So take us through, man. There's so many things here in this list that I have not experienced yet.
Yeah. So like I said before, I like taking lists that are outside the box because it's a bit of fun. And I like to do stuff a little bit differently. So the Wind Mage, who is the general, the Transporting Vortex is a teleport. 9 inches away, anywhere on the table. Then you've got the Lord Regent. So Lord Druid is generally who you're going to put the Sanctum on, because the Sanctum then becomes his War Scroll, and then the Sanctum moves with him. From there, you've got Severeth. Severeth obviously has all his movement shenanigans, can destroy terrain pieces, put speed of hitch on him. He's moving 48 inches. He's a good threat table wide, and he ties in with the Ballista for me. So
how are these two tying together?
So
this is some list tech I haven't heard about.
Yeah. So the Ballista has an ability which is, if you have a hero can pick a unit within 24 of him, and then a Ballista within 24 of the hero can then get +1 to hit against whatever unit they pick. So your Ballista's then hitting on 2s.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's good. It's good for picking off 5-win characters, because then you've got 3 shots, hitting on 2s, winning on 3s, Ren 2 for D3.
Because I haven't heard a lot of people actually using the Ballista. That's something that I haven't quite seen yet. And
they can be super swingy. But I do enjoy the fact that you can threaten stuff on the other side of the board, like those 5-win heroes, without Severeth having to go into them.
Yeah.
So Severeth can pick off 1 5-win hero, and the Ballista can try and threaten another 5-win hero, and you just try to take off multiple targets at once. Because like everything in AOS 2 at the moment, if you take out support heroes, you're generally looking at winning the game, and by denying your opponent the ability to do stuff. Other than that, there's not really much shooting in the list. I don't like taking shooty lists with Sentinels, because that seems to be the list to take, is the Sentinel lists. Dawn Riders are my favorite. Another one of my favorite models in the range. They're so underused, and they're fantastic against skinks.
Can we talk a little bit more about Severeth at the moment? Because I guess this is one of the few units that people are really obsessed with, or at least loving or hating, depending on if you're a player or an opponent, right?
Yes.
So I guess a couple of questions that I've got around something like Severeth, right? So one, Severeth's a named character where we also have a non-named version. I can't remember what the unit name is. But why would I go Severeth as opposed to the generic Fox?
Severeth destroys terrain. So on a 2-up, he can destroy a piece of action terrain. I don't think the other generic one gets the move in the shooting phase.
Yeah.
From memory. He seems, for 50 points, he just gets that extra bit that is worth it to me. And especially because the generic ones aren't heroes either. The ability to put a hero on the other side of the table is huge.
I think that was one of the surprises for me, actually, when I was looking at it. I think I was thinking, because it's much like the Beaver of Secrets without the named mountain. I've forgotten all their names all of a sudden. It's too late for me today. Yeah, like, but that's not a hero either. Like, if you take the generic battle cattle, it's not a hero, which kind of surprised me. And I think
the silly thing is that the Spirit of the Wind isn't even a behemoth either, so you can take multiple and it not be a problem. 250 points, and you can take as many as you want realistically. So they don't bracket. There's none of that. They heal. They got a 5-up shrug. They've only got a 5-up save though, so they are made of paper generally.
The generic one can get the free move, like at the end of the shooting phase. It makes the normal move, but it doesn't have the terrain destruction. So it's a nice little support hero, but I could see the incentive for paying the extra 50 points to get Severeth.
I like the fact he's a hero, especially with the missions that require having heroes on objectives or getting bonuses for having heroes near objectives. I find that's the better part for me. Also, the fact that he is such a polarizing model, he then becomes a target because people see him and then go, okay, I need to kill him, even though the real damage is in the Dawn Riders in this list.
And then And the ability, just the pure speed of this model, I think people are really concerned about it because, I mean, it's zipping around the board constantly, right? So for you to hold an objective and, like normally I can move off an objective and normally I've got the speed to get back to it if you start, winning the momentum, right? But if you can just literally zip around the board and steal an objective, especially for something like Scorched Earth, for example, like that's a real threat that you're able to zip around quickly and start burning my objectives as you start stretching me around. And it's not that expensive that it's a huge tax to your army to have this up your sleeve.
Yeah, that's it. So he's quite good, but all the hype around him and what was wrong with him was that people were worried you're not going to be able to catch him in combat, and then Manfred happened.
So if I'm an opponent, right? If I'm an opponent listening to this show, thanks for listening, guys. If you're a Lumineth fan, awesome as well. But if I'm an opponent, right? Like, how do I handle Severeth? Because I think a lot of people in the outside of the Lumineth community is freaking out about this rule because you can move in both of our turns, right? And it's super hard to catch.
One, shoot him. Shooting spells, easiest way to kill him. He's got a 5-up save and a 5-up shrug, 10 wounds. Melts like paper. Combat, you just need to put multiple units and surround him as best you can. If you have a lot of models, he's going to struggle to get to the... He doesn't want to go to the other side of the board if you've got a whole lot of models because he doesn't have the damage output to deal with a lot of stuff. He's good at taking out small units, elite units, or taking out heroes. So if you've got, say, you're going against a Gitz army, you don't want him anywhere near that other side of the board because he's just going to melt to weight of dice. And he can move 12 inches in the shooting phase in your turn, but if he's behind your lines and then he's got to move 12 to get in front of your lines, you can just surround him. So just weight of bodies, weight of dice is the easiest way to stop him. Or the rat trap if you've got the rat trap. But the rat trap stops most things.
Yeah, no, it's just an interesting one because again, it's one of the ones that people are freaking out. Like as an opponent, people are either talking about Severeth or they're talking about the Lore Master. I think the Lore Seeker.
No, Lore Seeker,
Lore Masters is the old Eldritch Council Hadouken.
Same model.
Give or take. But I'm sure lots of people are looking at this going, why all the Dawn Riders? And people probably got it in their starter box and they probably really haven't tapped into Dawn Riders. They might have had something on the flanks to kind of steal objectives. And that was probably what we were talking about in the early days, right? Our early list discussions were talking about this stealing objectives, pushing up forward, screening. But, no one was really building a strategy around the Dawn Riders. So why have you doubled down on Dawn Riders as opposed to more Wardens or Sentinels? And what are they bringing to the table?
So Dawn Riders have the one thing that Lumineth struggle with, and that is speed. So they move 14 inches. In Illumina, they're moving 14 inches before the game starts. And then if you know that you're taking first turn or that you're getting given first turn, you're then moving 14 inches again. So you've moved 28 inches before your opponent can do anything. Or if you've moved them up, and then you can almost redeploy with them. So you can create screens, you can move out and create a screen further forward. There's a lot of uses for them. I actually think they've got some of the best damage output, especially against chaff. So they've got the 2 bonus attacks when they flourish, right? So if they go into a 1 wound unmounted model, they get 2 extra attacks. If they go into a 2 wound unmounted model, they get an extra attack. They've got some metal weapons, so they can do mortals on 6s, the spell to do mortals on 5s. So you put a unit of 10 into, say, a unit of skinks, then the guys on top have 3 attacks each. The leader has, 3 attacks with his lance, 4 attacks with his sword, and the horses have 4 attacks each as well. You've suddenly got a lot of attacks to deal with these kind of units. And then you've also got the Dawn Rider Lance. So the Dawn Rider Lance is when you charge, you reroll 1s to hit. So you're hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s on the charge. So you've got a lot of attacks, you're rerolling 1s, you're getting across the board, you can deal with screens, the skinks, horrors, all of these Arcanauts.
Yeah.
Like, even when you look at cities, you throw them into Phoenix Guard. You can throw them into Iron Drakes. You can throw them into all these one wound models that are like generally you're going to find hard to touch with the rest of your army and annihilate things.
Because like when I look at this war scroll, right, like I look at it initially and it's just like, like, you know, I mean, without the bonuses, right? Like there's 5 attacks total between the hooves, the swords, and the lance, right?
Yeah.
You've got, you know, you're hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s. One of your attacks has rend, and they're all damage 1. So you're looking really as like a weight of dice before you start doing things.
Yeah. So on the charge, they get the extra rend, and also +1 to wound. So the lances are then wounding on 3s, -1 rend, +2 in the mortal wounds. So that's where you're starting to get the damage. They're like any cavalry unit. They're good on the charge.
Sure.
But they're one of those units that also have the Shining Host. So you can have them set up in a Shining Host and then -1 to hit. So if you're using them as bodies as a screen, you've then got a big screen of horses that are -1 to hit.
With the free game move from Alumnia, do you find that you put them on the side, or you try to bait your opponent by putting them out in the flank and try to force a deployment, and then you almost like early game you kind of switch out? And by the way, guys, if you can hear the shower noise, apologies. Hayden's partner, you can watch her on OnlyFans. Look up Jess, Aelf Bro Jess, if you hear the shower noises. But like, is it the speed that is because I guess the speed right is going to help you with the charge. Like you're going to be able to.
Yeah, that's it. These things get across the board either way, because speed of Hish doubles their movement. So then you've got 28-inch moving Dawn Riders anyway.
Yeah.
So like there's even if you sit them back and then you sit them behind your lines, if you know that they're going to come at you with, say, and put a unit of horrors in front of you, you can then go, okay, well, I can move whatever's there out of the way, and then the Dawn Riders can come in and hit them, you know, or they can go around your lines and go through. So there's a lot of speed in this list. Speed of Hish is probably the most useful spell in this list for me personally.
Why the 3 units? Because obviously you could flip them into 2 units of 10, or you could have 4 units of 5.
Board coverage. So it's 2 to 3 units in the battalion.
Okay, so you're building around the battalion, so you're not going any more than 3 because you want to keep within the battalion. But why not go like 2 units of 10?
Board coverage. So you can go to objectives. That's the reason that because everything else in the list other than Severeth is 6-inch move. So generally the other stuff is taking its time to get there. If there are, say, especially in stuff like Scorched Earth, if they're castling up, it gives you the ability to go, okay, well, I'm going to send this unit of Dawn Riders over here, this unit of Dawn Riders over here, and then the unit of 10 can go and get into combat, and the rest can just slowly move across the board and do its thing. They've just got a lot of utility for me. Like, AOS is a movement game more than anything else. So that is where this works for me. This list also works really well in Helon as well, with the Helon command ability, which is after a unit fights in the combat phase, it can move, make a normal move. So you send a unit of 10 Dawn Riders in, you use the command ability, say they've got speed of Hish on, cool, they're moving 28 to get into combat, they fight, and they're moving 28 again after the combat phase. So there's lots of movement with Dawn Riders, which is why I like them. Because there is not a lot of bodies in a Lumineth list. Well, especially in this Lumineth style of Lumineth list, there's not a lot of bodies.
I was just looking at the rules for your ballista. I know we've already kind of talked a little bit about the ballista, but how important or how beneficial have you found the blinding bolt, which is the once per battle, which is once per battle subtract?
It's literally only for your turn. It's okay if you want to shoot across multiple units, and that works because you then go, okay, well, I'm going to use an Aether Quartz to be hitting on 2s or rerolling 1s or whatever, and then I'm going to shoot 3 separate units. and give all 3 units -1 to hit. Say you need to go in and go, okay, well, these whatever I'm hitting normally hits on 2s or 3s, and you want to make sure that what you're hitting can't hit back very well. You're going to shoot multiple units and give them multiple -1s to hit.
When would be a good time to use a rule like that? Because I'm just rereading it, and it says, it says the unit is dazzled until the end of the turn. So it's not like it goes into your next shooting phase or the next hero phase, which is often like when we cast a spell, like the effects last until the end of the next, until your next turn.
Yeah,
but it only lasts till the end of the turn. So when's a good time to start tapping into a rule like that?
Whenever you need to commit hard. So if you're committing really hard into something and say sending all of your Dawn Riders into say 2 or 3 units, that's when I'd use it. To go, okay, well, I know that I'm not going to take very much in the trade because I'm making it so I'm taking less in trade back.
Yeah, because you'll fight twice. Because you'll fight twice, 2 units, so you'll get to fight twice, and then in addition you get the -1 to hit. So it's making it even harder to get the return back.
Yeah, that's it. So that's generally the only time it's really useful. Or if you need to commit on an objective and you say you need to hold that objective that turn and you're worried about losing the fight, you can go, okay, well, I'm going to shoot that unit to give it -1 to hit. Say on something like Knife to the Heart, for example. Like you can go, okay, well, I'm going to shoot the unit that's on the objective. I can't leave the objective and I need to kill that unit. So there's lots of uses for it, but it's almost like when you need to commit the most is when you want to use that -1 to hit. Otherwise, it's not super useful just because it's only for your turn.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Like if it lasted until the end of the battle round or until your next turn, probably be way more powerful. But as an opponent, I'm glad it only lasts for a turn, not for a full battle round.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this endless spell, because again, I haven't had a lot of experience. I haven't seen a lot of people taking Lumineth endless spells, and when they do, it's the Twin Stones. It's the Twin Stones. People are always taking the Twin Stones. Most people I see, this Sanctum, that's the circle thing, right? The wall. Yeah. People are using that to base their friggin' shrine just to put more support.
Yeah.
I think you were one of the people who kind of showed me that idea. But talk to me about this Sanctum. Like, why? What does this bring to the table? Because it's got a whole big block of text here.
Yeah. So when it's cast, it surrounds the wizard. Okay, so it has to be around that wizard that casts it. It can't be I'm going to cast it from this guy and put it around this unit here. It is only the wizard that casts it. That endless spell then gets the rules as an endless spell, as well as becomes the war scroll of the wizard that cast it. So your base of your wizard becomes the outside of the Sanctum, which is fantastic.
Which is like what, 160 mil? Is it bigger? Is it bigger than a Maw Crusher base?
It's the same as the Maw Crusher and the Tekla size base. That is the size of it.
So we're looking at a massive pie plate.
Yeah, you're looking at a pie plate, and then say you're using Protection of Hish. You're then measuring from the outside of that. If you're using command abilities, you're measuring from the outside of that. It also gives you -1 to hit and +1 to your save.
Because it's a sigil, gives you subtracts -1 to hit and a +1 to a save.
Yeah.
So who are you wrapping this around?
The Lord Regent. Because he's moving with the Dawn Riders. So then he's on a 2-up save and he's -2 to hit.
Can he fly?
No.
So how does the pie plate then come into play? Because I guess one of the benefits of like a Maw Crusher or an Alariel, which is on a big pie plate, is that they've got fly, so it makes them a bit more maneuverable around the table. Does that then become a massive pain?
No, because generally you're moving him to support your Dawn Riders. And then if you're supporting your Dawn Riders because he's near them, he can be near all 3 units without having to be near them, if that makes sense.
Because of the large base, like all of a sudden it's a lot easier to spread those abilities.
And he's a lot harder to kill because he then goes to a 2-up save with -2 to hit. So he becomes very, very hard to kill. The Syari Pommel, which is the artifact, gives him an extra Aether Quartz because one of his rules is while he has an Aether Quartz, he is -1 to hit and he also has +1 to cast.
I was literally about to ask you where are you getting the second -1 to hit. So it's from the Sigil and then the was it the Allegiance ability?
No, so it's it's on the Venari Lord Regent's War Scroll.
Gotcha, War Scroll.
Yeah.
And if he's within range of your Dawn Riders, could he benefit from Lookout Sir?
Yes.
So you could be up to a -3 to hit if you are keeping up with your Dawn Riders. You've got your Sigil and you haven't burnt your Aether Quartz, or you've got an Aether Quartz in reserve.
Because he moves 14 as well, so he's keeping up with them. And the big thing with him as well is that his spell on his War Scroll is he picks D3 units to give greater Blessing of Hysh. So D3 units to go, okay, they're mortals on 5s, mortals on 5s, mortals on 5s. So then the Dawn Riders can use the spells that are on their War Scroll instead of having to use the Power of Hysh.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we kind of skipped over the Venari Lord region when we're talking about it. Like, I'm looking at the War Scroll now. Like, he's got a 3-up armor save, so with that endless spell, it'll bring it down to a 2+. Moves 14 already. Only has 6 wounds, so it's a little bit. If you can get the magic through, or you got some range mortal wounds that aren't magic reliant, that could be a nice way, like looking at you, Hurricanum. But like 6 wounds is not a lot. You got the ability, as you said, the subtract 1 to hit rolls and +1 to the casting when it comes to the greater power of Hysh. You unmodified hit rolls of 6s, inflict a mortal wound in addition. And then obviously greater power of Hysh is the signature War Scroll spell.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that he can do. Like, I forgot to change the spell. He shouldn't have Ethereal Blessing. He should have Protection of Hysh on him as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So that way he's keeping up with the Dawn Riders, and Protection of Hysh is measured from his pie plate. So everything around him has a 5-up shrug.
So that massive base with a 5-up shrug or 5-up feel no pain or a damage prevention roll that happens after the armor save, with the massive pie plate. Again, thinking about just how because I play with more crushers, right? I play with things with really large bases, and you're surprised how big those aura buffs, being wholly within X or being in range of a command ability, even if it wasn't your general and you've just got a generic command ability that has a 6-inch range on those big pie plates. That's a massive, massive.
It makes a big difference. And the fact that you can have it on there, or you have it on the Caligrave, who's generally sitting in the Sanctum, means that you go, okay, well, I need to cast it up here. I need to protect my Dawn Riders, or I can cast it back here and protect my stuff that's on my home objective, which is generally where the Sanctum's going. So the Stone Guard are in the list because they are the best Anvil unit in Lumineth. And
when you say Anvil, just to clarify for people. Okay, so you put them on the objective, or what do you do to make the most of these guys?
I use them aggressively in this list. That's why Transporting Vortex is in there, because I teleport them across the board. And then these 4-inch moving things that don't die are suddenly on their side of the board, potentially on an objective, generally in cover. So you've got 20 wounds sitting in cover, ignoring Rend 1 on an objective. Makes them hard to kill. So you're not using them as a traditional Anvil of sitting them in your backfield or sitting them on an objective or sitting on protect a hero. You're actually throwing them up the board, but then using that super durability, almost like what Nurgle does. Nurgle kind of flies up your line, and then with that durability, just kind of pins you in your home field, denying you from objectives as long as possible. It depends what I come up against. If I come up against like an Alpha Striking army, then they sit in front of the entire army. And then whenever they hit me, they're hitting Stone Guard. So then I'm not super worried about them dying, and I can hit back over the top with the Wardens. Because an
example would be like super fast, like Iron Jaws, Iron Suns, or Beast Claw Raiders, or some type of like super fast hit you in turn 1. Nurgle, another example, like Black Kings just run up and smash you in the face. You'll put them up to almost castle or protect the rest of your bodies.
Yeah, and then the Wardens literally sit behind them, and because the Wardens have the 3-inch reach, if they hit the front line of the Stone Guard, the Wardens go cool, and they just hit back over the top without being able to be hit. And 20 Wardens are generally killing anything that the Stone Guard are in combat with, because there's 40 attacks with mortals on 6s, potentially 5s.
But then if you don't have this type of opponent, you can throw them up the board, again, and using transporting.
Yeah, put them on an objective. Then they're hard to shift once they're on that objective. They have to commit a lot to take them off that objective, which then allows the rest of the army to go and do what it needs to do.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. While they kind of start shifting their forces towards potentially your Stone Guard or ignoring your Stone Guard, then, you I guess the speed of the Dawn Riders is then adapting. And then it means you've got your Wardens in the back, like you're kind of just like slowly moving forward or slowly protecting an objective.
Yeah, so especially the 10 Wardens are generally sitting around the shrine, protecting, giving whatever's in the shrine look out, sir. Because it's garrisoned, so they still get look out, sir, which is
stupid.
Yeah, that's the way the rules are written. So
I said it. It's all good.
Yeah. So they're -1 to hit from being garrisoned, and then -1 to hit again from look out, sir. So, yeah.
if you were to change this list, because I'm conscious that like obviously there's going to be iterations of this. Before we move on to your Syar list, is there any modifications, any alterations? You mentioned the twins earlier. You've mentioned the Law Seeker. Is there any modifications that you might tweak?
I've written a few different versions of this, where especially after the FAQ dropped, I dropped Severeth, because the fact that his movement in the opponent's turn was legitimized, I was like, don't really want to do that.
It's a bit of a feels bad. It's a bit of a feels bad.
That's it. I'm all about trying to avoid NPE or non-player engagement, and that is very unengaging. Is having this thing that can kill your army and you can't catch it, just move away from you in your turn. And then Manfred dropped, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm putting him back in.
There you go. You justify your decision.
Yeah. But there's other lists where I have more ballistas. There's a list where I have another 5 Stone Guard and a Law Seeker in there instead of the Caligrave, and the extra Wardens. There's a few different tweaks. There's I really love the twins. There's a list where I've taken Severeth out and put the twins in. The twins don't add enough to the list for me personally.
Yeah, and like season for taste to you guys. If you only want to run, one unit of Dawn Riders and drop the battalion, or who knows what happens with battalions in the future. But I think fundamentally we've kind of seen how we're tying in some of the benefits, especially when we're tapping in the ability for the pre-game move, in addition to the speed of the Dawn Riders, in addition to the free CP that you can use when you're sitting on the terrain piece, and the fact that the Illumina command ability doesn't have a range. All of a sudden, that yes, you might be far away from the force, but at least you can use a table-wide command ability. So we're kind of seeing the connection of the dots here.
Yeah, there's a lot, and like we said at the start of this, going through this list is all about movement. So regardless of what's going on with the changes in the new edition, if you want a quick-moving army, like, you can move the Wardens up. If you want a screen to move up, there's lots of options that you can do with this. But it is all about movement. There's no obvious hammer in this list. So there's no big, I'm just going to destroy everything. There's no like Archaon. There's no Maw Crusher. There's no Stonehorn in this list. There's no unit of 6 Gore Grunters in this list. It's a control to go to the magic. It's a blue control army.
But your Lord Regent probably is such a fundamental piece to this list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously it's not Archaon, like you kill Archaon and the whole thing collapses.
Yes.
But the fact that your Arch Regent is going to get the bubble with the Endless Spell, which is then going to buff your Dawn Riders. Yeah. So you take down the 6 wound Lord Regent. you've
It sucks, but
you've reduced it significantly, but you're not out for the count.
Yeah, exactly. You can still operate without him. He's there and he's in a nice buff, but he's not. If he dies, you're not out the window, like if Archaon dies.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So you've got the other list, which is your great nation of Syar. I hate goading arrogance. I'm just going to put it out there. I hate it with a passion. So
Yeah,
you've got
most people
some
do.
cool things here, right? And like to me, this is why Syar is like number one, at least right now. Like it might change in the future, but even just when I look at the gleaming brightness ability, where your Syar units get 2 8th Court reserve instead of 1. You know, the depleting reserves, you really start to double down on the 8th Quartz abilities and then goading arrogance. Like, is this like the number one reason why people are picking Syar?
Goading arrogance is so obnoxiously good.
Annoying.
It is so obnoxiously good. The fact that
so
you don't have
for anyone who's on the podcast, I'll just read it out just in case you don't have your battle tome in front of you. But goading arrogance at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy hero within 6 inches of this general. Okay, all right. So general, I'm going to pick something within 6 inches. It has to be a hero, not a unit. Just has to be a hero. Cool, I get it.
Yep.
That enemy hero can only target this general in that phase. Okay. Yep. All right, so I've got to. It's like a challenge. I've got to fight. Like Hayden challenges me. I've got to fight Hayden. Right? Cool. I get it. In addition, you get to add +1 to the hit rolls that target me. Okay, that makes sense, Hayden. My Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, my Mega Gargant, my
Archaon, Marathi,
whatever it is, like some hero, right? Some combat monster. I'm coming at you, Hayden, with your elf bros. This all makes sense so far, but why is it so hated? Connect the dots for me. I know, but I want to connect the dots here for the listener.
Because if your general is hiding behind a screen of Wardens or Stone Guard and you pile in 3 and you can't fight the general, you just don't get to fight.
Because I have to fight you. So if you challenge me, with the goading arrogance, I can only fight you.
Yep,
I can only fight that hero.
The general doesn't have to be in combat. He just has to be within 6, not wholly within 6. It's just cool. If I'm within 6 inches of you, cool. You have to fight me. Oh, sweet. You can't get around my screen or over my screen to fight my general. Sweet. You don't get to fight. And then all of the stuff that I have in front of my general gets to hit you. And they have +1 to hit.
I imagine this is a really bad time for somebody who's like got a large base. Archaon, Maw-Crusher, Stonehorn.
Marathi.
Because these things, even though they can fly, right? Because that would be the first thing I would think of. It's like, right, I can just fly over your screen. Cool story. But
until you have units of Wardens and Stone Guard in front that they can't land.
Well, that's what that's where I was going, was that the base size is so large that you can't jump the screen. So if you are like a 32 or a 40 mil base, maybe a 50 mil base, and you can fly and you're a hero, then you probably with the right positioning, you probably could flip the screen.
Yeah,
probably. But for most things that you're thinking about, which is, again, these big bases, they just literally cannot jump over the screen, which then denies them a combat, which then means that in their next hero phase or next turn, they're going to have to retreat out just to get back into position.
Yeah. So this is my anti-Marathi. I run Syar specifically because of Marathi, because I think it was Pat Carter do it at the first Brizhammer. And I was like, that is offensive. I love it. So, because I had no answer to Marathi. I just couldn't think of how I would deal with her. This is when Corey was running the Queen's Bandit, whatever it was. And daughters were the big bad enemy before all of this new stuff came out. Marathi still sucks to deal with, but the fact that you can turn off Archaon, and especially because Archaon is 800 points of someone's army, if they're throwing that at you and you go, cool, you can't fight, good luck.
And a lot of army lists have some type of big bad on a big pie plate, or 110, 130 mil. Whether again, I mentioned the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, a Stonehorn, and a Maw-Crusher, or some type of even a Free Guild General on a Griffin. Right, they've all got quite large bases.
That's it. So
I mean,
there's lots of things that this guy takes out of the equation. And even if you don't have him in combat, it makes people think, okay, I can't come within 6 inches of this, so I have to go. And then you're just literally blocking out a 12-inch space of the board where this model can't come if it wants to get into combat. So it then becomes a null space for those heroes or those monsters.
So it's probably worth noting that is the general trait, right? So it's only on the general, it's not on every hero. So you are either putting a target on the general's head, I've got to remove this, I can't be in a position of goading arrogance. Or you're creating this no-fly zone anywhere near this general because people just don't want to be tagging units, and you can position, you can use that to your advantage for the rest of your force.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a trait. It's not even a command ability. It's the trait. So you're not spending CP to do this. It just happens. Yeah.
How would this come to play with something like Reapers of Vengeance, for example, where you've got a 6-inch pile in? Is that, and things like
that's the way to get around it. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, is that probably one of the few examples where you
anything
probably
with a
could get
6-inch
around
pile
it?
in. Yeah, anything with a 6-inch pile in, you're generally getting around it because it is at the start of the combat phase that it happens. It's the same. It's the same way that you get around like Deacon turn 3 and all that kind of jazz. Like anything that allows you to get around stuff that happens at the start of the combat phase, that's how you're going to get around it. Even if you start outside of 6 and then pile in, so you're within 6, then it doesn't matter anyway. The only there's lots of ways to get around it, but at the same time, on the right hero, it's hard to stop.
Yeah. No. I just wanted to call that out because it's not invincible. It's not invincible, folks.
There are ways to get around it. Yeah, but it's
in
just
most
one of the
situations,
things that's super strong.
Yeah, it's good. Which then kind of ties into the list, right? You've got yourself Techless, and I remember again when we caught up 12 months ago. One of the big conversations we had was Techless a trap, and that was a really big conversation that people were having online. Is 660 points with Techless a trap? So I'll get your points in a minute. Don't ruin Christmas. Like we got Techless in the list, right? You got 660 points in Techless. You've got your Cathalar. 12 months later, I can actually say Cathalar. I think I was saying like Kalatha. I don't know what I was saying.
So 12 months' time, you'll be able to say Illumina?
No. I can say it. I just want to keep saying aluminum. So you've got your Cathalar, which is your general, goading arrogance, perfect blade, and total eclipse. You've got something that's quite interesting here. You've got your Eidolon of Mathlan, which is the aspect of the sea. That is the combat. As combat Eidolon from
it's the casty wizard.
Oh, it's a spell one. Storm is combat. Sea is caster. Yep.
Yes.
You got yourself 10 wardens, 5 dawn riders. You haven't got any sentinels. Interesting. You got yourself 10 stone guard, 5 stone guard, 5 stone guard. You've got yourself 2 endless spells, one being the Umbral spell portal, the other being the twin stones, coming in straight on 2000 on the dot.
Yeah.
So many questions here. I asked you about Techless being a trap. Let's go to that one first.
Yeah. So
where do you stand with Techless? Yeah.
I took this to Brizhammer Chaotic. So I went 3 and 2 with this list. If I remember to move a unit of Wardens, I would have gone 4 and 1. But was running out of time, forgot to move the Wardens, and Dino's a really good player. So I lost by 1 point.
Don't bring excuses to my channel. So look, it's a tournament. This is a tournament practice list.
It's a tournament practice list. It's an out of the box list. I came up against KO. I beat KO. Came up against the Techless Lumineth mirror match, which was interesting. The Techless off. I lost to Hallowheart with the 20 Iron Drakes, and I lost to a Hedonites of Slaanesh list, which is Dino's list, with his Fiends and all that jazz. This list is more of that NPE style list. It is built around negging out your bravery and the Cathalar or Teclis using the signature spell, so the darkness from the Cathalar or crippling vertigo from Teclis, which is rolling against your bravery. So Teclis has can use Voice of the Mountains, which is -2 to your bravery. Then the Eidolon has a spell which is D6 units, -1 to hit, -1 bravery.
Yeah, we're starting to stack bravery.
Yeah. You can be -3 or -4 to your bravery. And then you're rolling those against bravery on 2d6 to go, okay, can you move, shoot, fight, charge? If I roll higher than your bravery, you can't do that. So you've got potentially 2 Bellicors a turn.
So you're talking about just so that's coming from the Cathalar that you're making. So just because I just want to connect the dots here again.
Yeah.
So you're doing a whole bunch of bravery debuffing, whether it's going to be using the Aether Quartz to then throw back the minus to the bravery from the Cathalar ability.
Yeah.
You're also getting next to the bravery from
Voice of the Mountains, which is a spell from the Lore of the Mountains, because Teclis knows all the laws.
Yep. So we can pull a spell from the spell lore to increase another negative to a bravery characteristic.
So -2 in the turn that it's cast, -1 in the subsequent turns until your next hero phase.
Yep.
So if you take the first turn of the battle round, -2, and then until your next hero phase, which is potentially 2 turns, the -1 stays around. Then you've also got the Eidolon, his signature spell, which is Tsunami of Terror, D6 units within 12 inches, -1 to hit, -1 bravery. So that's actually what was going through the spell portal and not Teclis's bomb. Because normally, because Teclis, like we were saying before, Teclis is on such a big base that sometimes you don't need to actually use the spell portal to hit stuff. So by putting the -1 to hit, -1 bravery through the spell portal instead, you're making your list more survivable by having multiple units of theirs on -1 to hit, -1 bravery, as well as then spreading out that bravery debuff even further.
And then when you start bringing in the Cathalar's Darkness of the Soul, that you're getting them to roll 2d6 and every time they want to move, make a charge, shoot, or fight. And because you're manipulating the the bravery characteristic. So unlike when we start talking about Battle Shock, where you get your bravery, by having 1 in every 10 models, you're never modifying the characteristic. You're just getting a plus because of the banner, because of 10 models, because we're tapping into the characteristic. If I have a bravery of 7, for example, or 6. And you're putting a -1, -2, -3 to the characteristic.
-4.
Or -4.
Yeah.
What -1,000,000? Bring in endless spell, shards or something to it. Like, the point is that
the Horrorghast was another choice.
The point is that a bravery 7, or even a bravery 10, if you can bring it down 4 to 6, you've got to roll under 6 on a 2d6 in order to move, charge, shoot, fight, which can be brutal, right? It can be brutal. And did you say there's a second version of that? So you've got your Cathalar who has 1?
And then the other one is in the Lore of the Mountains. It's called Crippling Vertigo. It stops the movement side of things. It doesn't stop you from shooting or fighting, but it stops you from moving, charging, or piling in.
And that's where you got your Umbral Spell Portal as well, being able to at least extend what I imagine is a Darkness of the Soul, which is, they seem like a power pair that almost everyone's kind of taking. But the Cathalar and the Spell Portal, being that Darkness of the Soul is only range, 18, but it really allows you to get, up to almost 30 or 40 inches, when because you set up one Umbral Spell Portal and then is it within 6 or something, and then it's another 18 from the second. I always forget the rules because Cities of Sigmar plays a different game.
It has to, well, the other thing to point out is that I wrote this for Brizhammer Chaotic, which we knew was being played in Ulgu. So we knew that we could set the spell portal up anywhere on the table. So that went into building this list.
But even still, tournament lists still have this being run.
Yeah, exactly. So the spell portal sets up within 1 inch. Sets up within 9 or 8, whatever it is. But the
You've got to
unit casting through it has to be within an inch.
Correct. You've got to be within an inch of the Umbral spell portal to cast through it.
Yeah.
They can only cast one spell through the spell portal too. So it's not like you sit next to Teclis and then throw 4 spells out.
And you also have to declare that you're casting through it.
Yes.
Because there was a situation that we had that they went to cast a spell through it, but the spell didn't go off. So they're like, okay, well that didn't go through it, so I'm going to try and cast another spell through it. If you say it's going through it, that's it. Regardless of whether it goes off or not, that's it.
All right, so your Cathalar is going to be throwing out the Darkness of the Souls through the spell portal. You've got the Lore of the Mountain spell that's going to allow you to do a similar, not the same, but a similar version of that, tapping into those minuses to the bravery. And as you said, doubling down, you could get one of the Forbidden Power Endless spells that also causes a -1 to bravery as well. So, you've got more abilities if you want to tap into that. But
that's it.
The Eidolon, I just want to talk about the Eidolon. Is that just for the signature spell to get the bravery debuff? Or why would you spend 300 points on an ally?
Movement. So the way that you can change this is you can drop the Eidolon and drop the Twin Stones and put a Valinor in the list. There's an instant swap there. You then got another -1 to hit from his bubble, yada, yada, yada. I like the Eidolon because what this list lacks is speed. Eidolon moves 12. It can operate on its own. It's got a 5-up shrug built in. It's a 2-cast wizard that can re-roll its casting and unbinding rolls. And it benefits from Teclis' aura because Teclis' aura is friendly models, not Lumineth models. So it gets +1.
Do you really need this though? Because obviously you spent 660 points on Teclis. You've now, when you add the Eidolon in, you're at 1,000 points essentially just in 2 models who are wizards.
Yeah. I wrote this as an out-of-the-box thing because I wanted to take something different. And then I found it actually works quite well. So that's just out of sheer luck that it works well. The fact that it's in Syar as well is what makes it work fantastically. Because you've got the 2 Aether Quartz on stuff, you can protect Teclis a lot. Because against KO, you can go, okay, well, I'm going to give him +1 to save, and then I'm going to use a command point and give him an extra +1 to save, so he's now +2 to his save. He's on a 2+ save. He can tank a lot more than normal. So if it wasn't in Syar, I don't think this list would work as much.
And I'm not saying for any second hating that the Eidolon is a bad choice. I think it's an interesting choice.
It's meant to be different, and that's the whole point of this list. Is it's meant to be different. The fact that it moves 12 and can fly, it means it plays a similar role to Severeth in the other list. That it can operate on its own. It can go out there. It's got a 5-up shrug. It's got a 3-up save. It's survivable. It heals D3 if it doesn't re-roll a casting roll. It can cast a spell to heal another D3, so you're potentially healing 2 D3 a turn on it. It can go out there and operate on its own without having to be near anything. That's why I went with the Eidolon. Because
I imagine a lot of people aren't touching this. Like when I look at this, people are probably thinking priority number 1 is take down Teclis. Or if they've experienced a Cathalar before, take down the Cathalar. And I imagine that the Eidolon gets ignored a lot.
Yeah. Yes, it does. But it's got an okay combat profile. Like it's got a shooting attack at Ren 2. Like it's got a lot of tools. It's not like the aspect of the Storm, which is great at what it does, and it's great at combat. It's a utility piece. It's good at a lot of things. It's not great at anything. But the fact that it benefits from Teclis and is giving +1 to cast and ignoring spells, like enemy spells on a 4-up, that's where it comes into play. Because he doesn't care about protection of Teclis because he's got his own 5-up shrug. So like he cares about the ignoring spells on a 4-up and the +1 to cast. Because generally he's the one throwing out the spell portal. Because they've got +1 to cast and rerolling casts. So you're generally getting it off, and you're not having to waste a spell from one of your Lumineth units to get the spell portal out.
Do you find that the Eidolon supports the Dawn Riders well, or do you act them almost independently on flanks, or are they like a little power pair?
So the Dawn Riders in this list are because I didn't want to pay another 10 Wardens. But if I didn't have these guys in there, I would have lost 2 of my games. So and it's exactly what we talked about before. They're great at stealing objectives. I came up against a Flesh Eater Courts player who left a perfect gap for the Dawn Riders to string through to get to his side of the board, and literally it was in Scorched Earth, exactly what we're talking about, and burnt his objective. He took out his Arch Regent in combat, and that was game. You can see it there. They are just that sneaky, just going to take that objective. And the Eidolon does the same thing because, like you said, people generally ignore it and try and go after Techless or try and go after the other stuff. And he can go out and take objectives and do all that on his own while taking out small characters with his shooting and attacks, while also casting spells and doing all of that. And he's on that 3-up save. He can heal himself. He becomes very tough to deal with. So
why is there no Sentinels? I think this probably will be the biggest surprise, in the Hayden conversation. And I imagine I haven't seen Jordan's list yet, but I imagine based on what I've seen on Seasons of War and battle reports, a lot of the builds overseas are doubling down on Wardens and Sentinels, and maybe more Sentinels than Wardens. But you've elected to avoid the shooting altogether. So I guess the question is, why no Sentinels?
To me, they're a crutch.
Pardon?
To me, they're a crutch. Plain and simple. They're very good at what they do for their points, and I want to play with different things. And this is a different way of doing it.
Hayden wants to play on AOS hard mode, basically.
Yeah. Sentinels are really good for their points. The fact they don't need line of sight and they just shoot over everything and they take out heroes at range. And like we said before, it's a non-player engagement experience.
Well, I'm glad you've got the Cathalar and Techless there to avoid those experiences.
Yeah, right.
I'm glad you got. I'm glad you've taken the moral high ground and dropped the archers.
But it's different. So and that's the thing. Dealing with that is a lot easier than dealing with 60 Sentinels across the table just shooting off your army in a turn, or shooting off all your support, all your characters.
I was going to say specifically the heroes. That's where people are going. People are going hard on the Sentinels just to take down those support heroes, and then slowly move up their force.
Yeah, that's it. This was meant to be a bit of a muck around list. I built it and expecting to go 3 and 2, which is what it did. And it's a bit of fun. It's meant to be something different, and I put these lists forward because they are something different, and there's ways to play that aren't just the Sentinel, Warden, Orlan, Legion, which we are seeing do very, very well.
Yeah, and you don't have to keep justifying it, Hayden.
I know. You love giving me crap, and I love it.
I'm giving you crap, and look, if you. What we're doing here is we're showing off different builds, and I can go on the internet and pull any internet list, which is just getting all the Sentinels in the world, techless or no techless, but it's going to have the Cathalar, it's going to have the Umbral Spell Portal, and that's why Hayden initially didn't want to show me the Dawn Riders list. I know he's been very passionate about Dawn Riders, but it's just showing you another way to build a list. And in 3 months' time, when the meta completely changes, tables might shorten or expand. Who knows? All of a sudden, the Archer build may no longer be the viable build, and maybe it's now rotating your force. So it's always good to hear different options, different ideas, and you pick what works for you. But I do want to ask you maybe a couple more questions about this list before we start bringing it home. The last list had the Stone Guard, and they were protectors of the garrisoned hero. And you could use the vortex to kind of teleport them around. But in this list, you've got 3 units. You've got 3 units of the Stone Guard, 1 being 10, 2 being 5.
Yeah.
Are you playing them in a similar role to protect Techless? So you obviously can't throw them around unless you're tapping into Techless, knowing all the spells. What's the deal here?
So there is substantially more in this list, as you can probably see. There's double the amount of Stone Guard in this list. This list starts as a castle. Regardless of what mission you're playing, you're starting as a castle. Because you're protecting Teclis, you're protecting everything. The Dawn Riders are sitting behind. They're not really sitting in front, or they're sitting out on a flank away from the rest of you. You're protecting your 3 heroes, and you're setting up that front line. Because your Wardens are sitting directly behind it, and then whatever hits or comes close, you're then pushing back out against. Excuse me. And then you're using Speed of Hish to try and get them across the board as well. So they're there as purely the anvil because they don't really do much damage back. They all have diamond pick hammers. I was a big fan of the stone mallets before. I've changed that to the diamond pick hammers because, one, time efficiency. Rolling 6s to hit for double damage and then having to roll the wound roll takes a lot of time. In a list where your hero phase generally takes a lot of time anyway, just trying to cut back on time, as well as finding that doing a mortal wound on a 6 is a lot more efficient as well. So, because normally the stone mallets do 2 damage on the roll of a 6 to hit, whereas the diamond pick hammers are a mortal wound instead of damage. So then you're cutting down on time, and you still only rend 1 for damage 2, with the 6s to hit doing double damage. Whereas if you come up against something that has a 2-up save, you can just hit over the top of that save with a mortal wound, which is a bit nicer. This, again, because it was the chaotic event, I was actually expecting to see a lot of the Knights of the Empty Throne. So this list was actually built to try and combat Archaon and Knights of the Empty Throne.
I mean, there was only 10 Archaons at the tournament.
Yeah, it was only 10, yeah. And I didn't hit a single one.
I got one. I got a Reapers of Vengeance one. But what's making these guys super durable? Because they've only got, like when you look at the base War Scroll, right, it's 2 wounds, 4 up armor save.
Ignoring Rend 1 because they are Alareth. So most things are Rend 1. You're ignoring their Rend. Because we're in Syar, they have 2 Aether Quartz, so you have 2 lots of giving them a 3-up save. They're in cover, you're giving them a 2-up save.
Well, assuming you got me in cover, but like even with outside the cover, I think that was the dot that I wanted to connect. Because like when you look, because I imagine people are looking at this going, like they're listening to you talking about this super durable, and they're like,
so,
it's not Phoenix Guard. Like there's no 4-up damage prevention. Like how on earth you get like? But all of a sudden you're connecting now. The Quartz.
They're ignoring Rend 1, and if they're near Teclis, because Teclis's War Scroll spell is 5-up shrug to units within 18 instead of being 9 inches like Protection of Hish. So you're around Teclis, you've got the 5-up shrug, you're ignoring spells on a 4-up, you're within the Cathalar range to shoot off the Battle Shock to other units. It just makes them stick around a lot longer, but they're just not really doing much damage back. But that's not their role. Their role is to stay around and not die.
Talk to me about the Twin Stones. You're right. Like the whole reason they're there is not to do damage. They're there to protect Teclis. Because like once you get into that juicy center, and that's why I used to use Phoenix Guard to protect my Hurricanum in Hallowheart, because once that juicy center is cracked, like Teclis or the Hurricanum and my little battle mages would never stand a chance against the double Maw Crusher, the Stonehorns, or whatever is coming at me in my face.
Yeah, exactly.
So having something durable is going to be critical. But talk to me about the Twin Stones. I really like the Twin Stones. When I reread them for emerging meta, I could see why they were one of the top. They were one of the top endless spells chosen across the entire game for good reason.
Yeah, so they're 30 points, which is
crazy.
Cast on an 8, I'm pretty sure.
7. Cast on a 7.
7, yeah, there we go. And when you cast them, you put a counter down. That starts at 1. When a spell's cast within 12, including itself, because it goes down, and because the spell is cast within range of it, it straight away goes to 2. Because it's when the spell is resolved. So it goes down, the spell is resolved within 12 of it going down, so it straight away goes to 2. And every time you cast a spell with a Lumineth unit within range, that counter goes up. You can spend the counters from a Lumineth unit to gain that many to cast, up to a maximum of 6.
Yeah, it's capped at 6.
It's capped at 6. But whenever you use the counters to cast a spell, it'll just go, and it goes off. It just goes straight back to 2. So it'll never be at 1 unless that spell gets unbound, or you fail to cast with it. But like, you have Teclis nearby who auto casts 4 spells on a 10. So cool. It goes to 2, and then you cast Teclis's 4 spells. It's suddenly on 6.
So which spells are you most, obviously it's situational and all of that, blah blah blah, but is there particular spells that you really want to get off by tapping into the Twin Stones?
Darkness of the Soul and Total Eclipse.
Okay.
So
Why?
Total Eclipse is spend 2 CP for every command ability, board wide.
Yeah.
And Darkness of the Soul for the Cathalar because it casts on an 8.
Yeah, and I imagine, the Cathalar, I thought it was either going to be the Cathalar spell or even the Umbral spell portal, just because that can be so critical to get. Like if you unbind the Umbral spell portal, that can stop, well, at least delay the impacts for a turn or 2.
Yeah, but the spell portal is generally coming from the Eidolon. So the Eidolon doesn't get to use the Twin Stones because it's only Lumineth units that get to use it, but the Eidolon's getting +1 to cast as well as rerolls.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's you're more than likely getting the spell off anyway, regardless. And if spell portal doesn't go off, that's fine. Like it's a big part of the list, but there are other things you can do with it without the spell portal going up. Plus, Teclis gets to eat a spell portal in the hero phase, so you use it and then you eat them before your opponent can make use of them.
Yeah.
The only downside to the Twin Stones is they are a predatory endless spell, so they do get moved by your opponent potentially as well.
And you've got to be, because the spell, you only start moving the counter if spells are cast within 12. So if I take the second, I can move it outside of the 12 range, and there's nothing you can do other than unbind and start the tokens again at 1/2.
And then you have to cast it again.
I mean, like when you got Teclis, like you are bringing it back, which is casting a spell, but it's
generally you're casting it from the Wardens though. So you're using an Aether Quartz on the Wardens to cast an extra spell, and they're the ones who are casting the Twin Stones. So that way Teclis is free to cast his 4 spells once the Twin Stones are up.
I was going to say, if you really needed it, you'd throw it down with Teclis, but you don't want to spend one of those 4 valuable 10+ casts on getting the Twin Stones up.
You're always using Protection Teclis, so there's one slot already taken up. You're always generally using either, like in this list, you're always using Voice of the Mountains generally, unless you're coming up against like OBR or something like that don't care about bravery or anything like that. But then if you are in that matchup, this list is on the back foot anyway. Like, you're either using his signature spell to go and do damage out, or something defensive.
I was going to say you want the 5-up Feel No Pain to protect you from the double catapult potentially, which is what OBR is running at the moment.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things you can do. Something that I didn't realize was as strong as it is Solar Flare, and putting Solar Flare through the spell portal as well. So Solar Flare is pick a point on the battlefield.
I was literally going to bring the rules up. I'm like, what does Solar Flare do?
So Solar Flare is pick a point on the battlefield 10 inches away from the caster. Wizards within 12 inches have -2 to cast. And if that point is on an endless spell, it gets dispelled. If it's on a unit, roll a dice for each model in the unit. On a 6, it's a mortal wound.
Do you know what that kind of sounds like? That sounds a little bit like the Everblaze Comet. I mean, it's not the Everblaze Comet, but like I take a 100-point endless spell from Stormcast for that type of ability to have a -1 or a -2 to casting and some chip damage mortal wounds. And that's just on a War Scroll, or it's tapped into the spell lore.
Yep, that's in spell lore.
Damn, Lumineth.
Yeah, but it's within 10, and your own models are affected by that as well. So Lumineth wizards are affected by the -2 to cast, which is why you generally try and put it through the spell portal, because that way it's away from you and you're casting it right into the middle of there. Say you're coming up against Tzeentch and they've given you first turn. You go, cool, well, I'm going to put this in the middle of your army, and now all your wizards are -2 to cast.
Yeah. I was going to say it's already hard enough to cast a spell with against Lumineth, let alone then you adding a minus 1 or 2 to my casting. So it's kind of why I build lists about not casting, or if I am casting, they're little bonuses, not key parts to the strategy. And I think coming up against you, Seraphon, Lords of Change, Nagash's, like I mean, other than Hallowheart, like the guarantees of like my Gits army, for example, I've been doing Gits, and I'm like, I'm gonna really drop back my endless spells, really drop back my spells, because if I come up against you, there's hundreds of points being thrown away that I just can't tap into.
Yeah. The big thing to realize as well is even if you do come up against a list like this with the super magic heavy on a 4-up, units within 16 of Techless ignore it, and they pick a enemy unit within 18 and do D3 mortal wounds to it.
Yeah.
So, like, especially with KO, who want to say have the spell in the bottom and want to throw down the rat trap, cool, you can do that. If it's my entire army, I can ignore it on 4-ups and then deal D3 mortal, like multiple D3 mortal wounds to whatever threw the rat trap at me.
Which is why, like, something like the Hurricanum, and if you're listening to this as an opponent, this is where things like the Hurricanum, for example, I love against Lumineth, because it does a whole bunch of mortal wounds. It can do up to 9 mortal wounds in the shooting phase that aren't a spell. So it's just a straight up ability. So I don't have to worry about it being thrown back at me or being unbound.
Or any minuses to hit, because it's an ability.
Correct. So any way you can find those types of things, that will help you against something like Lumineth, or vice versa. If you're a Lumineth player, you're hearing that I've got a Hurricanum, that's probably a priority number 1 to be putting the Cathalar's ability to stop me from getting close to you to do those mortal wounds.
Or the Iron Drakes that it's obviously supporting as well.
I don't take Iron Drakes. I'm not one of those cheese. I'm not a cheese merchant. I'm not a cheese merchant. I don't run the bridge, and I don't run the Iron Drakes. That's AOS easy mode. Is there any way, like, if you were to drop the Eidolon in this particular list, where could you reinvest those points? Like, would you put in you put in more bodies? I was going to say, like, would you bring in a Law Seeker? Would you bring in Sentinels? Would you go more Stone Guard?
Law Seekers are great, but they're going to be I think we're going to find them to be super swingy. Their ability is fantastic, but the fact that you have to put them on the other side of the table, anything with mortal wounds is just going to hit over the top and kill it. And there's so many mortal wounds out there that, like, cool, having a 2-up save in cover is fantastic. But if they've got mortal wounds, it's a 6-wound character, which is a named character. So you can't take artifacts, can't take traits. So you've got 160 points out there, which may or may not last a turn, which can be invested in 5 bodies or another support hero that can actually synergize with the rest of the army. It's just one of those.
What about Severeth for the 300 points?
Yeah, but you're losing the 2 casts, which in that list, and the extra -1 hit and -1 bravery.
I'm talking about if we did drop if we didn't. If somebody didn't want to buy the Eidolon because they don't want to own it, or like
put in 3 ballistas. Put in 3 ballistas. You're going to get the -1s to hit from the ballistas shooting. You've got then more range threat, so you've got 9 shots at -2 D3 damage. That you can shoot out across the board. Take 3 ballistas. You can take Severeth. Severeth kind of fills sort of the same role. You can take a Velenor and drop the Twin Stones. So if you're taking a Velenor, he fills that kind of hammer role. He fills the hammer role better than the Eidolon does, but because you don't have a Stone Mage, it's going to be bracketing.
Yeah.
So the Stone, and then you'd have to look, okay, well, if I'm taking the Stone Mage, do I drop the Cathalar, or do I try and fit in something else somewhere, or do I take your Metrica and make it the Stone Guard battle line, and then you're having to play around with it a lot more. If there was anything that was going to be dropped out of that list, it'd be Techless. So 660 points of investment is still huge for what he brings to the army. Like I said last time, Techless is a trap. He's a big distraction Carnifex, and like the fact that you can take of Eleanor and Severeth for the same amount of points.
I think in some matchups he's just incredible value. In some matchups you're throwing it away. I don't think Teclis is a trap. I think right now it's not Nagash, for example. It's not Archeon where every battle there is incredible value coming out of these models.
Yeah.
I think in some matchups the Teclis is just
against the top table armies, which is realistically what you need to plan for. He doesn't give the value back that you're getting for those points.
Well, I imagine KO would just like shoot him off the board.
Yeah, KO shoot him off the board. He was left on 1 wound, even though I double Aether Quartzed him. Like, he survived on 1 wound, and that's only because he was next to mystical terrain.
Right. Yeah. So which is super lucky to have gotten that off.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah. He melts because he's got a 4-up save base. So it's one of those things that you just go, okay, well, what can I do? And against those top tier stuff, he doesn't do very much because against Seraphon, he doesn't give the value back against Croak. You're better off taking, you can stop one of his spells. You don't stop all of his spells. Sure, you've got the 4-up ignoring spells, but that's a 50-50 shot of ignoring the spell and bouncing back at Croak. And if someone's playing Croak and you've got Teclis, they're not going to put him up. They're going to keep him back, and they're going to do mortal wounds across the table at you. So you need to be able to touch Croak across the other side of the table, which is where you use Sentinels to shoot him off. But we
do know Croak is getting a new War Scroll, so who knows what that looks like at the point of this recording. But I think the point you make is very valid, right?
Yeah.
Is that against the top tables, they probably have the tools to handle Teclis. So you hit the wall. So if you're looking to win a tournament, there's a good chance that maybe Teclis is not going to get you there. It'll get you 3 wins. It'll probably get you 4 wins potentially. But to get that 5-0, the one that's going to get you the podium, maybe as you've said, you've got a better investment of that 700 odd points or 660.
Yeah,
it's list tech.
Yeah, it's still the Warden Sentinel base is the way to go. With Lumineth, the way they are and the way that the meta sits at the moment, it's the core of Warden Sentinels and sprinkle your flavor around it. And the fact that Wind Mages now are added to it and Wind Mages have the teleport is huge. You now have shooting cavalry in the wind charges, which are fantastic. Their shooting's not great, but the fact is that they move 14 and they ignore terrain. So they're just moving across the table. They don't care about anything like that. So they're just off the charts with their movement, and they can, in combat, they ignore the core rule of having to pile towards closest model, and they can move 3 inches out of combat.
Final question is, what are your thoughts on, because one of the models I got really excited about with this particular release was the Battle Standard Bearer, the old, is it the Banner Blade?
The Banner Blade,
Venari Banner Blade.
Yeah.
What's your take on the Banner Blade? Is that probably really good just around Warden Sentinel builds? Is this what are your thoughts on this particular one?
It'd be a very pretty model on your shelf.
Really? Not there's no real build for it at the moment?
No, not at the moment. Not that I can see, because it's giving you +1 bravery to your characteristic, but you have to center your entire army around it. Lumineth struggle to take objectives if they are staying around that one space. It'll be cool to have maybe in the shrine, but then you don't have a wizard in the shrine. I like having a wizard in the shrine to make use of the rerolls if I need to. It's just personal choice, I think.
I'm just really looking at the War Scroll, and there's nothing there that I see. Cool. Like at the sun metal weapons, cool. I got once per battle thing, okay. But majority of the abilities, I'm like, it doesn't really sound like nothing we've talked about for almost 2 hours has talked about you requiring a bravery boost. It's all been about debuffing your opponent's bravery, not about boosting yours. But should Inspiring Presence change in the future, maybe this would be important.
Yeah.
Maybe. We don't
Yeah,
know. We don't know. But if they ever removed
Yeah.
Inspiring Presence, or Inspiring Presence became like +2 to your bravery as opposed to ignore battle shock, then maybe getting +1 or +3 from the banner blade could actually be really valuable.
I'd invest in a second Cathlar.
Trying to find ways this could work. Like, it's such a cool model.
Yeah, I know. It is such a cool model, but like there's better toolbox units in the army. And that's the sad thing, is that like you can take a Caligrave for 100 points to do pretty much the same task that this banner blade is going to do at this point in time.
Banner blade.
Yeah. And even the Caligrave isn't really going to see huge amounts of play.
I haven't seen one. And I think this has been the interesting thing for me talking to you, Hayden, is that a lot of the things that you've talked about, I have yet to see on the table. Most of my opponents that I've played against Lumineth have all been this version 1 of Lumineth. And maybe it's because people are either not committed to buying into the release. They don't quite know where they want to put their dollars to. If they're just like slowly painting, I imagine this takes a long time to paint some of these detailed models up. But Fox and Lawseeker are the ones that people definitely talk about. But you've brought to the table a lot of different ideas about the ballista. You've brought in, the Wind Mage. You've brought in some different ideas to maybe consider for list tech. And I'm personally excited to fight a different Lumineth, because I've only ever thought Techless and Warden Sentinels, or Cathalar with Warden and Sentinels.
Yeah.
So it's basically like Techless or no Techless. Like, I haven't played anything outside of that. So Lumineth players, get excited, get interesting with your list build. I'm sick of
there are builds in this book.
Guys.
There are so many builds in this book, guys. Have some fun with it, play around with it, and literally just enjoy playing with pretty models, because they are very, very pretty. So
I look forward to stuffing you in my pants with my Gargants. Anything that you've learnt along the way that you want to share before we wrap this up, Hayden?
Generally, guys, just make sure that you're enjoying your games, and take the fact that this is a game away from it. Have a fun experience for you and your opponent. So
I expected something different. That's not what I expected.
I've grown as a person, okay?
Yeah. Dickhead Hayden that I met in 2016 is no longer. He is aggressively average. He is a wrestling fan. He got retweeted by Ricochet. All things are on the up for Hayden. Go check out his Mrs. OnlyFans. It is Aelf Bro Jess. Aelf Bro Jess. You heard the shower stream as we were recording. I hope you all hung out to the very end. I did hear the shower, and then I'm pretty sure she brushed her teeth as well. I did hear the tap turn on in the bathroom, and I've been to Hayden's house a few times, so I know why I heard those noises. But you are aggressively average. Do you want to give a shout out to your crew? And if people want to talk to you, Hayden, your Twitter handle will be below. You are indeed the Aelf Bro.
Yeah. So on Twitter is Elite4Blue. We've got Aggressively Average is our crew. We are exactly that. We love going 3 and 2. Shout out to Brody, James, Scott, Gavin, the boys. That's pretty much it. That's where we're at.
Hayden was in my team last year, 2 years now, for the Runax. So unfortunately, he'll be going down this year. He's not in my team anymore.
Apparently we're Cranfield for light. Because Cranfield didn't get a ticket. So we've got Welfare, Liam, myself, and Cam. So and then Cranfield for light.
And then, ironically enough, I chose my 3 team members who are all now in the Australian team that got announced 2 weeks later. So I got the eye for talent, and all the pressure's on me. But I didn't apply for the Australian team, guys. If you're wondering like what the deal is there, but my 3 of my teammates are all in the Australian team for the ETC / the World, so pressure is indeed on.
Yes, it will. We'll see how we all go, but hopefully the old record for us goes well, because we haven't finished outside the top 3 yet. So
No, indeed. And we'll make sure we fill out our sheets appropriately this year.
yeah.
But
thank you, Gabe. Sorry.
Hayden, this is a pleasure as always. Thank you for coming back on the channel. Hopefully,
No worries,
between
mate. Thanks for having me.
this show and the Jordan from Seasons of War, there'll be 2 ideas brought to the table in addition to the entire backlog of videos. So Hayden has done another video with me. We had one with Liam Burnett Blue. We talked all about the Stone Mountain and all of his friends. And then Martin Orlando did another video. So between all of these videos, we've got 5 Lumineth videos. We have a lot. So you should get a good idea of some different ideas to bring to the table. But Hayden, always a pleasure. Let's bring this home.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Peace out. I hope you found that discussion valuable. If you did, give the video the old thumbs up. And if you have a comment or an insight, leave it in the comment section below. The champions over here are my AOS Coach Patreons and YouTube members. So you guys are bloody legends. Thank you for all the support. If you want to know more about the support programs, the links are below down here in the episode description, along with a link to the Discord server, so we can continue this conversation. Until next time, don't forget to name your characters and have a good one.